Well, hello there, everyone. It is officially spring here in the Pacific Northwest. Well, I should be more specific. This is what is known as the false spring. I will not be tricked this year because almost every single year that I've lived in the Pacific Northwest, I get super excited right around March that the sun has come out and it's gotten above 50 degrees and it's not currently raining. So, and there starts to be a few buds on trees, maybe a few blossoms as well. And I'm like, it's over. The darkest part is over. It also happens right around the time of the time change, when we switch back to spring forward. And I've been faked out in the past. In fact, last year, we got almost all the way through June until it stopped being gray and rainy here and stopped all of a sudden having huge swings in temperature back to cold again. So I am in a place of gratitude that it is warm out currently and sunny out currently, but could change at any moment, which I think is a perfect mindset to have for what we're going to talk about today, because there have been changes in the weather over the last 9 months, especially if you're in sales or pre-sales, or you really haven't been unaffected by this no matter what business you are in. And it doesn't matter what part of the world that you're in, whether you want to say that we're officially in a recession or, you've had different things happening. You've seen all the waves of tech layoffs and things happening. We've been having episodes specifically to help people with figuring out their story and working on ways that they might be able to make their resume look better with our guest we had last week with Aaron Luber. There's lots of different ways that you might be sensing that things are changing, whether that's been job impact or whether that's just been the way that your customers are talking with you, how they're acting. If you're in any sort of sales role, and my opinion on this, anyone that is in business is selling. Even if your role doesn't specifically say sales in the title or marketing in the title, you are part of a mechanism that is helping people solve problems. Whether you're directly talking with customers on a daily basis or whether you're supporting the people that do by building the product or building the service, you are helping with selling that service in some way. And so the way that customers have been acting, and this has happened for our business as well, is their needs and their pain is changing because of what's happening. And so some budgets are going away. Others are becoming more of a priority because of things that are shifting and happening, different things happening with staffing, all that kind of thing. And so what you might be seeing and experiencing is, oh my gosh, things are changing. And I don't understand the weather patterns yet and how am I supposed to address these new changes that are happening? And I have seen people, and I've even been at companies where we've done this, where all of a sudden the customer's needs change, your audience, the people you're talking to, the sales calls and the things that you do with them and the way it used to work isn't working anymore. They seem to not find it as important to talk to you about your solution, your service, or to even move from a lead to being a qualified sales meeting or call. Because of the fact that they're distracted, their pain has changed, their needs have changed, and their emotions that are attached to those have changed as well. Their story is changing, and your story needs to change and match it as well. So this is the perfect time to talk about this, because I see sometimes that a knee-jerk reaction might be to all of a sudden go, okay, we need to retool our solution. We need to change the thing, the service, or the product, or the products that we're selling. We should change those, and then we'll start telling them about them. And then you lose a bunch of time, and then you lose a bunch of development hours, things like that, to make changes that you think the customer might want, but you're not even sure if they do. When it's actually much, much easier, more effective, and quicker to get better sales and get faster sales by instead tailoring your story to meet the customer's new story. Here's what I mean by that, and I'm going to show you how to do this. We like to make this so much more complicated than it needs to be, because we start getting freaked out and get emotional about the fact that the sales calls aren't going the same way that they used to. People don't seem to be responding to our service and our solution that we took so much time to figure out. And now they don't seem as interested in it. So what I want you to think about is it's kind of like that book. Many of you have probably read this. It's a pretty famous business book. It's called Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. He also wrote the 1 Minute Manager book. So you may have heard this, one of these books, the 1 Minute Manager, or Who Moved My Cheese specifically. And it's about how caught up we get in the fact that all of a sudden, like we had the cheese and that was for our customers. And then all of a sudden it's gone. It's moved, like the weather changing analogy that I just used. And so in order to do this, you change your story, like you move with the cheese. Don't get mad that it's not working anymore. We're just going to tailor the story a little bit differently for you. And it's a lot easier than you think. And we can take a breath and concentrate on just tailoring the way we talk about our solution, the way we talk about our services to our customers and our customer audience. It's much faster to be able to do this. And here's what's great about it. You are actually matching where they're at emotionally right now and helping solve their current pain and helping them sleep better at night, which actually draws them closer to you. And that is all about the story. It has nothing to do with the solution. They need the solution to do a certain thing for them. They just might need it served up, the story of how it's going to do that, how it's going to make them feel a slightly different way so that they can refocus on you and your solution, how it's going to help them to get the result that they want, even if that result is slightly new. And I'll give you an example of this. So if they have new concerns, let's say that you're working with a company, and I'll give you an example of a company that we worked with recently. It was with Microsoft. Traditionally, when they bring us on board, or a company like this brings us on board, they want us to work with their sales or their pre-sales teams, sometimes marketers, but mostly sales or pre-sales teams, because we teach them how to tell more effective stories and visually support them. And we talk about neuroscience and all that kind of stuff and how to match that with the audience so that they can feel more authentic, telling stories that connect with their audience so that they can close more deals faster and do better demos. So mostly it's the beginning of the sales process, or at the part of the sales process where they're actually buying something or they're talking with them. Now, we were brought in because there was a specific group that was in customer support and adoption, one of the Microsoft teams. And their world is much different. For them, they're not trying to get the sale. The sale has already happened. What their main priority is now that the customer has bought this thing, this service or this suite of products, what's the best way to train and educate the people that will be using those products, that managers and executives might have decided to buy this suite of products and services, but how do we train the people that will actually be using them every day to love them from the beginning and to see value in why they want to learn how to use these new tools? Because most of the time humans, we get really comfortable with the tools we already have, right? Even if we don't like them or we wish there were lots of problems with them and we wish we could change them, human natural behavior is, yeah, but I know how this stuff works. Even if I hate it or it's not the best, I know I've gotten used to it. I know how to use it. And so change, learning a whole new system, learning a whole new program or something, it's not always people's favorite thing to go and do. So how can those adoption support teams get over that hump of people just not installing them, not using them, not switching over quickly, which of course has repercussions further down the line when people want to renew their subscription, or that company, like Microsoft, wants the customer to renew that subscription. It makes the conversation much easier if those people have gone ahead and rolled out those programs and adopted them and put them into their daily work streams. So obviously they really want to make sure they're doing a good job there. And they had a problem with that. So what we did was, instead of changing our training, changing the way that we help them tell stories and help them connect with people through a sales lens, we changed how we told that story to them when we were training them to, this is going to help you close more deals faster, and here's the way that our solution stories are going to do that, to, you have the pain with the customer of rolling out adoption and support. We're going to help you with stories that make it a lot easier for people to understand how this solution or this new service or product that their company has bought is going to make their life so much better, so much to the fact, and so that they're going to want to do it. It's going to be a priority for them. They're going to make time to learn how to use this new thing because it's to their advantage. So how do we tell stories and find stories about how it's going to make their life better that emotionally they get attached to, that now they just want that to be a first priority for them to go and do that? So we change the story from the sales to that. And it is just a tailoring of your talk track and of your story. You're going to have some visual support for this. If you're in a corporate environment, probably some slides or some things that you're going to show them, keynote, something like that, that supports how you're telling them this is going to help them. But notice we're changing the story and the way we talk about how our solution or service is going to help the customer rather than changing the actual content itself. Changing the actual product, service, or content is cost prohibitive. It slows you down. And also you're guessing. You might spend a lot of hours figuring out how to change the actual content when in the end, you just needed to keep the content the same, but serve up the story differently, maybe reorder things a little bit differently in order to address the customer's need. So that's an example of how that could work in a corporate environment. Now, if you're an entrepreneur or a coach or something like that, you might already have a program or a service that you're using, and you've noticed that it started dropping off because people's consumption of it, because people's budgets have started changing. Especially if you're in training and enablement or marketing or something like that, you may have noticed this, like their budgets have gotten kind of closed down on that. So how can you change that story about how it helps them with their current pain? So these are the questions to ask. There's only a few. We're not going to make this overly complicated. Number one, what are our customer audience's new concerns? It was sales. We need more sales. Now it's adoption support in my example. So how are those people's brains different? How are the sales rep has quota, has all this kind of stuff, things they're concerned about. They want to look shiny. They want to do these things. We help them in a certain way with that. But these people that are in charge of training people, that are training managers, that are educators, how does that story need to change for us? Not changing our content, again, not doing that. How can we tell the story of how stories, very meta in our case, will help them to be able to help people understand that rolling out, adopting these services, these things it's going to be to their advantage. So how is the pain different? How is that support person, that educator, what keeps them up right now? Is it that people, they do the trainings but the adoption still doesn't happen 30 days after, 60 days after, 90 days after, they're not seeing the numbers go up? And then that reflects poorly on them. And then they're afraid that their job might be in jeopardy with their manager. Like, we want to think about what keeps them up at night. What are they stressed out about? What would they like for the pain to go away? So think about that. Really allow yourself to go for a walk. Think about, okay, this is what they're concerned about now. I've talked to a couple customers. They're like, I'm concentrating more on this. Okay. How does our solution, now you're going to match your solution, your service. So once you have some ideas of what might be keeping them up at night, what are the core parts of your product or your service that could remove those concerns and pain? What does it do? For us, it's how story selling helps people sell things, how it helps marketers, how it helps entrepreneurs and coaches be able to have a conversation and know their story and know how their story serves their customer. And that actually helps them get more sales, but it also helps them be authentic and stay in integrity with themselves, which is very important. So it doesn't feel like sales. So what is that thing? How does your product or service? That's the next thing. Okay. Our product or service isn't changing. I'm not allowing you to change your product or service. So what are the other benefits of your product or service that maybe you hadn't always highlighted? Like, it was a kind of nice to have, but maybe now it's the exact thing that they need to solve that pain you just thought about. What's the way that you can pivot that story so that it matches up with their pain? Now, I want you to remember, and this is really important, now that you've connected those two things, put it in their own words. So you want to make sure that whatever audience you're talking to, how do they talk about that pain? How do they say it? What words do they use? That specific audience, because you might be talking to different audiences, different kinds of customers. So how do they say those things? This doesn't need to be any more complicated than this, but I want you to think about how they would say that. And on your first couple interactions with people, I want you to be listening, have your listening hat on of how are they saying what their current concerns and problems are? And ask them, like, what's keeping you up at night? What kinds of things? I know that, budgets are tight and things are happening. You might not be able to use our service right now, but if our service was able to be helpful to you, what sort of things does it need to help you with right now? Like, be an advocate for them. Let them be a little bit vulnerable with you and try to create an environment where they can do that so you can figure out like, oh, okay, well, if I was able to help them, what would our services be able to do, our product be able to do that we could realign the story so that it helps them with that? Because a lot of times it might just be education. When you change the story and you educate them through that story about like, did you know our product or service actually does that in this way? It could address that problem. They just don't have the time or the knowledge and the depth of knowledge for your service or your product or what your business does to know that actually that would solve their problem for them if you change the story. So that is it. That's really it. The only other thing that I would say, and this is kind of its own lesson unto itself, but I want you to know that it exists, is when you are going into these situations and telling stories, something that actors know about before they come on stage or before they are setting up for a new shot or they're starting a new scene, is they want to know what their character's intention is. And this is something that you can directly use when you are telling stories for sales, pre-sales, customer support, marketing, all the things that we've talked about, entrepreneur, coach, doesn't matter. What is your intention when you show up to that meeting or you show up with that new customer call and you're there to help them? What kinds of things are you thinking about? Our customers or our students, a lot of times what we will do is we will tell them like, hey, you need to come with a very clear intention and it needs to be a powerful intention. So for instance, an intention of like, well, I'm here to help, or I'm here to make a sale. That's not what I'm talking about. What is your intention for your audience? How do you want to make them feel? What do you want them to walk away with at the end of this? So here's some examples of some strong intentions that you can choose from if you were picking them off of a silver platter that you were walking around with and you were selling or you're talking to your customer audience. Do you want to inspire them? That there is a possibility that they could get out of the pain that they're in, to inspire. Do you want to excite them that you have the solution for their problem? Do you want to challenge maybe some thoughts they have about how something's not going to be possible, and you can actually challenge those thoughts and help them to be able to see things through a new lens? Do you want to convince them, rescue them, surprise them? These are all action-based, powerful intentions that if you know, and you even put a Post-it note on the side of your screen before you start that Zoom call, and you get on and you have a strong, specific intention, it is amazing how much more influence you will have and also how much faster you're able to connect with your audience, whether it's one person or whether it's a whole team of people. This also works when you're doing a keynote speech or you're doing a workshop or you're doing something where you're on camera or in person. Knowing what your intention is for your audience and how you want to make their lives better and being very clear about it will get you through so many things that might go wrong during your sale or your presentation or your demo. Because if you stay true to that intention of how you want to serve your audience, how you want to make them feel, and how you want to be there for them, you will always find the through line. You will always find the right story to be able to help them. So I'll leave you with that. Have a fantastic week, my friends. Remember, don't make it any harder than it needs to be. Stories are very powerful. Stories can rescue you from where you're at right now. You don't need to reinvent the wheel and change all of your content. Don't overcomplicate this. Look for their new concerns. Look for the emotion attached to it. What's keeping them up at night? Align that with the parts of your offering that are the remedy for that pain, even if they used to be, they're smaller things that you don't usually talk about during the sale or during the process. And then from there, align those things, show up with a strong intention, and it will be amazing how quickly you're able to connect with your audience. All right. Have a fantastic week, my friends, my heroes, and I will talk to you soon.